then we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. As a teacher, I've internalized this message. Every day, all around us, we see the consequences of silence manifest themselves in the form of discrimination, violence, genocide, and war. In the classroom, I challenge my students to explore the silences in their own lives through poetry. We work together to fill those spaces, to recognize them, to name them, to understand that they don't have to be sources of shame. In an effort to create a culture within my classroom where students feel safe sharing the intimacies of their own silences, I was always taught that the most meaningful thing one could do was to give something up, sacrifice something you typically indulge in to prove to God you understand His sanctity. I've given up soda, McDonald's, French fries, French kisses, and everything in between. But one year, I gave up speaking. Figured the most valuable thing I could sacrifice was my own voice, but it was like I hadn't realized that I had given that up a long time ago. I had spent so much of my life telling people the things they wanted to hear instead of the things they needed to.
My apologies, I was muted. But thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk with Jean Price. I am so glad that you tuned in. We have a great show in store for you. You have time to like, to share, to comment. I want you to go and tell everyone that Jean Price with Real Talk is on. And you know what? You never know. You might be a guest on our show, or we might talk about something that brings a lot of relevance to you, especially in a day like today in our culture. There's so much to talk about, so much that we're dealing with, so many issues in church and out of church that's happening to us all. But tonight we're going to be talking about overcoming by telling our stories. So I am so excited for my guest to be on the show tonight. He's no stranger to Real Talk, and every time he comes, he is a blessing. It's so good to hear his story. It's so good to know what is going on. Sometimes you need to know how what someone has gone through for you to understand them a little better. It's so beautiful because God always gets glory. So help me welcome my guest tonight, Charles Colston, to Real Talk with Jean Price. Charles, come and join me.
Good evening, Lady Price. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you again, as always, for being on Real Talk. Every time you're on the show, it's always a blessing. And I'm excited about tonight because I love our theme, overcoming by telling our story. So before we get started, I would love for you to greet your audience and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I am Charles Colston. Oh, man, I have a few titles attached to my name. I am a chef. I am a new author. I'm a father. I'm a minister. I'm a brother. I'm a friend. I'm a lover of people. I'm just I don't know, I'm just the person that people can talk to. Like, I'm always willing to talk, and to listen, because sometimes people just need you to listen. So that's me in a nutshell.
Wow, well, that's great. So we're going to dive in because I am definitely one for hearing somebody's story. You know, oftentimes, and I think you can probably agree with me, sometimes people can look at right how we are on the outside and maybe see where you are now or see where I am now, but they don't understand the story that brings us right to where we are at this point in our lives, and how your story, or can I call it a journey, has caused you to triumph, has caused you to transform, and caused you to transition. So I want to dive right in. Now, can you kind of talk to us a little bit tonight and tell us about your experience from journey to prison and then to be recognized as a chef?
Wow. Okay. So I am what the old people down south call the knee baby, right? I'm the fourth son out of five sons. Um, I I was the sickly child. seizures, grand mal seizures, throughout most of my life, asthmatic throughout most of my life.
Wow.
So I didn't have a lot of super freedom like a lot of kids had, from ages 1 up until
Mhm.
at least 10.
Wow.
Because my seizures was really, really bad. I remember at one time, um, I had a fever so high that my mother and my aunt had to put me in a tub of ice
Wow. Yeah.
to bring my fever down. Um, so that was like part of the the point in my life where I realized that I was gonna have to fight.
Okay.
I realized I was gonna have to fight. Um, so that was that. Um, my mom sent me down south when I was 12, 11, 12, um, for me to finish school down south. So, being separated from my brothers and my mother, it was tough. My grandparents, they loved me.
Yeah.
I know they love me. But it's different.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was different. And so I went through high school. I did a lot of things that I didn't quite remember.
Okay.
And I'll get to that aha moment that I had one day. But I did a lot of things, a lot of positive things down there that I didn't remember for some years. I moved back home. My mom was sick,
Mm,
kidney failure, diabetic.
wow.
So when I moved back home, it was, trying to take care of my mother. I turned 20. I had my first son. So I was a young father. Um, I was I got hurt on my job. They didn't even take me to the hospital. Like one of my coworkers took me to the hospital. So I had no money coming in.
Wow.
One of my older cousins was real close. We were real close, and so I started hanging with my older cousin. From there, it was back into back into gang banging again.
Okay.
Um, Selling drugs for the first time. So all of those things led to the inevitable, and I finally it all caught up to me. And interestingly enough, when I went to prison for something that I didn't do.
Mm,
That was the real interesting thing, something that I
okay.
didn't do. And I remember my mother coming to visit me in the county jail, and she used to one of my nicknames as a kid was Chili, and so she said, "Well, Chili, I know you didn't do this,
Hmm.
but you got to thank God that you didn't get locked up for all the things that you did do."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when I thought about it, and like 2 court days later, I copped out. I was like, "Yep, you know what? Give me the 5 years,
Wow.
before y'all start digging,
Right.
and then it'll be a very long time before I
Right.
come home." And at that time that I went to prison, I had my second son,
Hmm.
and so they were babies, and so the interesting thing is how we think about time inside of prison and then how people think about time outside. In my mind, inside 5 years wasn't a long time. But I mean, I'm around people who got 15, 20,
Right.
25 years to life.
Right.
But in the real world, I was away for a long time.
So let me ask you a question. I want to go back because, again, we're talking about our stories that have allowed us to overcome, to accomplish. And of course, the word I used before was transition and even transform. You talked about being in a gang. Was there something, because you were sent away? And I understand that being sent away down south, because that's
Yeah.
what happened to me when something goes on up here. Your parents ship you down south. Why? Do you remember as to why you got yourself caught up in a gang? Were you looking for something? Was it that void you were trying to fill?
But it was, being sickly. I was in the house a lot, right? But my mom was a single mom.
Okay.
You know, um, at that point in time when she sent me down south, my oldest brother had gotten locked up.
Mm-hmm.
My brother after him had gotten locked up.
Wow.
Right. And so my mother was like, me and the third brother, she sent us down south like, all right, I'm not gonna take any chances with you guys. And so, I had my crew that I was already running around with, doing a bunch of knucklehead stuff. And so she did it to protect us.
Okay.
She did it to protect
Yeah.
us because we were already getting into stuff.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting. So you mentioned before I asked the question about you were locked up for 5 years. Do you feel that you had a Joseph experience? I understand how Joseph got into prison because of his brothers and he sold them. I get that. But there is an experience that happened when people go in prison. Do you feel you've had an experience like that?
Absolutely. So before I got arrested, I remember calling my mother one night. I had been out with some cousins and drinking a lot. And I remember calling my mother like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Mm,
And I said, Mommy, I feel something. I said, something gonna happen. I said, I don't know if I'm gonna go to prison or I'm gonna get shot, but something's going to happen. I feel it. And she was like, no, don't talk like that. I'm like, Mommy, I feel it. Um, and so we spoke. She prayed over me. We got off the phone. 2 days after that, a young lady who used to hang out with us came by and said, hey, I just heard, some people talking like, hey, the big guy in the Benz, when he come through here, we're gonna shoot that car up. And I was like, oh, okay. And this was December, so it was around like the 21st of December. Um, Christmas Eve, I wind up coming to New York. My mother told me um, not to come. My second oldest brother, he told me not to come. And I'm like, bro, I haven't missed a Christmas, you know, with mommy since I've been back from Alabama. I'm not about to miss one now.
mhm.
And came up here and literally, literally, I was up here not even 24 hours and I got locked up.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Wow. So you definitely had an experience. At what point did you know, Charles, that you wanted to share your story with the world?
To be totally honest, I don't think I ever wanted to share it.
Why is that?
Um, I I come from a real personal family,
Okay.
right? Like, so we don't talk about a lot. Like, even before my mom passed, like only my aunt knew how sick she was. You know what I mean? Like, so it's that kind of
Right.
tight-lipped thing. So I never, it was never on my mind.
Okay.
I just knew when I got out of prison, I just knew that, from the drug selling and everything, I helped destroy my community. So I wanted to help rebuild it.
Okay.
And so I remember after I graduated from culinary, I graduated at the top of my class, and I was at work one day. I was getting off of work, went in my locker, grabbed my book bag, to put my shoes in my locker and everything, my work shoes. And I was digging in my bag for something. I don't even remember what it was. But for whatever reason, I had so when you're the valedictorian à la culinary, they give you this um, like this almost like this bronze medal.
Okay.
And it was in my book bag. It was in my book bag, and I was in the locker room by myself. And so when I pulled it out, I looked at it, and it was like somebody punched me in the stomach,
Hmm.
right? And I sat down, and then I began to think about things that I accomplished in my life.
Mhm.
Um, because people who've been to prison or people who had it rough in their life, they feel as if, um, they messed up so bad, there's no redemption.
Yeah.
They feel like they're the bottom of the barrel, no matter how much we smile and laugh and
Right.
how generous we are, whatever, we feel that way deep inside.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And And it was more so in that moment for me, it was more so God telling me like, no, you gonna speak.
Wow.
And so I thought about how my school didn't have um, internet. Like we in the country, we didn't have the internet, and I helped wire the school for internet. And I was in a program called Upward Bound, where we would take, college courses
Right.
during the summer, and I helped start a newspaper. I was the first to be in a class to learn Spanish over the internet. So, I had done all these things that I hadn't thought about in years
Okay.
until that very moment.
Wow. Okay. What was so awesome about Joseph, in the Bible, right, was that he was able, and it's sort of like your story, which is why I asked you that, he was able to accomplish so much, even though he had a hard beginning. Where do you see yourself, and how, and I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but was there anybody in your life, Charles, that had a great impact to help you along the way? Because Joseph found favor. He was in prison, but he found favor. Is there anybody in your life where you found favor with?
Oh yeah. I think the biggest person was my grandfather.
Okay.
The biggest person was my grandfather. And even though I only spoke to him once when I was in prison, he was like, listen, we mess up. Everybody messes up. He's like, but this ain't the end. It's not the end. You'll still do great things. And as a kid, I watched my grandfather do everything. I watched him get up to work, 4 o'clock in the morning and go to work. And I was with him when we farmed and planted crops. And, he taught me how to plant crops and how to feed livestock and how to cut wood and, you know, how to go find fresh water when, all the power is out and, and the pump is not working to pump water out the well. So he showed me all these different things,
Mhm.
basically just how to be a man and just how to live,
Right.
how to live when you have much and how to live when you have little. So my grandfather was huge in my life.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. So here you are now. You mentioned you're a chef, you're a minister of the Word of God, in your local church. So now your grandfather played a deep role in your life. Now, are you playing that role in other people's lives?
My friends forever, they always come and speak to me. That's been one of the things, constants in my life. Um, and so I tried to, because first of all, I believe in this. I truly believe this in my heart. Any advice I give anyone should be God based. Like it has to be Bible based if I'm giving you advice, right? Because I got to give you something that's going to bear some fruit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So with my friends, with my sons, with my sons, I talk to my sons and, and my older sons, they ask me all kind of questions. Um, and so that's really good. And just people in general, I go places and I don't know people and we just have conversations. I just have a heart for people and just want to help and just want to help because I see the world for what it is and not for what we make it out to be sometimes. Because, a lot of times we live in our own bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Charles, so many people fail, right? And you said it yourself about you went down that dark hole of being in prison and so forth. How important is it for all of us not to give up on people when they have failed or on hard times?
Failure builds character, right? If you never fail, you'll never know what it feels like to succeed.
Mm,
Right? You'll never understand your successes if you never fail,
mhm,
um, because your successes will be based on your last success,
mhm. That's true.
right? So really, when you look at it, you didn't really fail. You just had a learning moment. You just had to take an impromptu class. because it's something you missed along the way.
Right, right.
And it took me a while to get to that point. So it's it's one of those things that people will say is easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But you gotta just have a will to fight. You gotta have a will to fight.
Yeah. That's so true. We're going to take a commercial break, but I want to ponder on this question. And to my viewing audience that are watching tonight, thank you for chiming in on Real Talk. We want you to write in the chat how important it is for us to share our stories, because the Bible tells us that we overcome by the blood of the lamb and the words of our testimony. But Charles, when we come back, I want to talk about how important was it for you to make peace with your past. We'll be right back on Real Talk with Gene Price.
In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. As a teacher, I've internalized this message. Every day, all around us, we see the consequences of silence manifest themselves in the form of discrimination, violence, genocide, and war. In the classroom, I challenge my students to explore the silences in their own lives through poetry. We work together to fill those spaces, to recognize them, to name them, to understand that they don't have to be sources of shame. In an effort to create a culture within my classroom where students feel safe sharing the intimacies of their own silences, I was always taught that the most meaningful thing one could do was to give something up, sacrifice something you typically indulge in to prove to God you understand His sanctity. I've given up soda, McDonald's, French fries, French kisses, and everything in between. But one year, I gave up speaking. Figured the most valuable thing I could sacrifice was my own voice, but it was like I hadn't realized that I had given that up a long time ago. I had spent so much of my life telling people the things they wanted to hear instead of the things they needed to.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Gene Price. We've been having an amazing conversation with Charles Colston. He's been on the show before, but every time he comes, he impacts us by sharing with us his story. And tonight, that's exactly what we're doing. We're overcoming by telling our stories. And it's so good to have with us tonight in our studio audience, Angela, who's so faithful to Real Talk, Yesenia, and it's a blessing to see Bishop Wesley Knight is with us tonight. And of course, one of my faves, always, Joy is with me tonight. So Charles, come back to Real Talk with Gene Price. This has been such a great conversation. And before we took our break, I asked Charles a very important question. And I think we all, right? I think you can agree, Charles, have this question that's kind of like down in us, and we all go through things, and we might all make mistakes and have disappointments. And the question to you was, how important was it for you to make peace with your past?
So to back up a little bit, my grandfather was the greatest practical influence on my life, from a male perspective. My mother was the greatest impact as far as wisdom and biblical wisdom. And so we had a conversation one day, and this conversation is what made me gain peace with everything that I've been through. Again, she says, Chili, God has people just for you to reach, that nobody else can reach.
Yes.
And you have to smell like them people.
Wow.
That's how they'll recognize you. They'll know you've been through what they've been through, because you smell like them.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that fully until some years after she passed away. She passed away in 2013. But now I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that everything that I've been through wasn't for me, isn't for me, but it's for this next generation.
Yeah.
It's for this next group of lost people who were, where I once was, trying to find my way, trying to find my identity. And so it was that conversation and a host of other conversations that I had with my mother that put me to this place where I'm at peace. I'm at peace, right? Because what happens is people will use you, misuse you, People will slander you. You know, people will be comfortable with where they know you were.
Right. That's right. That's good. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you grow, they become uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And so these are some of the hurdles that you have to jump over,
Yeah.
to keep forging ahead and to make peace with your past.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because again, it's just lessons learned.
Mm-hmm.
It's lessons learned. And life is the best teacher. Life is the best teacher. So it's truly not about how many times you fall, but how many times you get up.
That's good. That's so powerful because, and like I said, we all, Charles, have something about our past. And the key word is understanding. It's just that four-letter word. It's the past. And I love that because we're not who we were. We are actually growing and becoming who God ordained for you to be. I have to ask the question. You mentioned that you're a dad, and that is it's powerful. And I don't have any sons, but I have daughters. And I think one of the greatest things for me, or it was a struggle at one point in my life, Charles, was that I was trying to teach my girls while I was learning at the same time because I had such a traumatic past, you know. When you raising your sons, did you find it difficult because there's some things you did not know, or maybe there's some things you did not glean? So you're teaching your boys, but you're also learning at the same time. Did you find that difficult?
Oh, very much so. Full transparency. Me and my two oldest boys, we just started speaking again regularly, like in the last year and a half.
Okay.
Um, because I saw the road that they were going down, and I've been down the road, and because I'm even now I'm still in that learning
Yeah.
phase. I'm
Mhm.
still in that learning phase. Um, and presentation makes the difference,
Yeah,
right? You learn that being a chef, you learn presentation
it
means
does. How
everything,
you present it,
right?
that's right.
Right. And so presentation means a lot. And
Mhm.
so we just started speaking because even though the information that I was given was correct, it wasn't presented well.
Wow. Okay,
I didn't package it well.
just wait. Pen, we gotta stop right there. That no, that was a lot. That was in that little sentence that said a lot. And for those that are listening, that is a true, authentic, organic moment of saying that you just said. You didn't package it well. That's powerful. Because oftentimes, as parents, right, or people, we don't always present the package in its proper form. But we're so
Absolutely.
grateful to God who takes that package. God knows how to rewrap it, put the bow on it, and everything. That is so powerful that you said that. And you repackaging your package has now opened the door for the communication and the dialogue for you and your sons. How are they gleaning in this relationship that you're forming now? I think that's so powerful.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. And last week we were on the phone. We had a phone conversation last week. It was probably the longest phone conversation we've had,
Wow.
even since we've been speaking. And it was like almost 4 hours.
Oh wow.
Like I had to tell him, look, I gotta get off. I gotta get up in the morning. It's like, yeah, we do too. We gotta go to work too, right? And all of that, honestly, um, came from me
Mm,
and spending time with God
yes.
and having that prayer, which I don't think this prayer is usual. I think it's an unusual prayer, that people would rather not pray because you have to sit with yourself and allow God to reveal yourself.
Yes.
Um, and so that prayer was, Lord, change my response. Change my response. And even at the time, I didn't know how deep that prayer was about changing my response, because that means like in every area of my life, you have to change the
Yeah.
way I respond to
Yeah.
things. And so doing that open up the doors, like
Mm,
for us to speak, and has been amazing.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. I remember a time in my life, sir, where to the very thing that you're saying, when you have to come to grips with who you are, when you look in that mirror, and when God says, looks at you and says, no, I need to talk to you, and being able to and I have to go back to what you said, and I love how you put it, just repackaging things, because my oldest daughter's 40, and years ago, I feel that we had to repackage some things so that she can really see what God really had in that box, and then when she was able to see it, sir, she was able to find her own type of packaging with her relationship with Christ. Angela just chimed in to what you were saying, one of our favorites, who views all the time, and she said that is the hardest thing to do. Praying, Angie, that's so powerful, right? He was good when he said that. Praying and looking into you. It's a reality check when you really see who you are. It's just a reality check, and I'm so grateful for your transparency. So for those that are watching and parents, having somebody like yourself on to talk about that true authenticity of what it's like to really see yourself. So the question then I have for you is, what would you say to your younger self now? Because you've gone through that period, and now you're gleaning, you're growing and becoming. What would you say to your younger self?
Endure.
Mm,
Endure. Because we can go back and tell ourselves, invest in stocks, or you know what I mean, stay away from this block, or do this and do that, and all that's well and good. But life will happen regardless. Um,
yeah.
and so with everything that I've been through and losses I've suffered, I lost my father 8 months prior to my mom. So, and my second oldest brother, I lost him, and I lost aunts and uncles and cousins. And I think for like a 3 years, between like a
Mm,
3 year period, I lost like 20 close family members. Right.
wow.
So if I could go back to tell myself anything, it would be endure, trust God.
Yeah. 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 Angela chimed in again, and I think this is so good for you to hear. I was going to call you chef because that's what I used to call you. She said, it's a painful experience, and I'm still growing and learning me. And I'm grateful for her transparency today. I'm learning how to praise God for me, just me. And I like the fact that Angie says that, Charles, because sometimes we're not perfect, right? The Bible says we all fall short of his glory. But it is nice sometimes when you could take a look at yourself, right? And then just do a little tap of, you made it, or you that little moment, accepting the little things that you're able to accomplish. When you started accomplishing those things in life, how did you celebrate you?
Uh, it was more of my celebrations was more of quiet time with
Okay.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because so in prison, I used to teach a class called ART,
Mm,
aggression replacement training.
okay.
And anyone that had any violent crimes had to pass this class before they were able to go home. And in the breakdown, this ABC model, we would talk about negative self-talk and how the things that we say to ourselves
Mm,
negatively
yeah.
um, makes us do negative things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that quiet time with myself was just like, yo, bro, look what you did. Like, look what you did. And I still have those moments, right?
Okay.
Never stop having those moments. I, I, I recently just published a book.
Yeah, I want to talk about that book, Charles. Let's talk about that book. I need to talk about that book.
And so I recently published a book, and thank God, I praise God for it, because the way it was written for men, but anyone can read it.
Okay.
Anyone can read it. And the book is titled Adam, Where Art Thou?
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, and one of my favorite chapters is the chapter on chapter 7 is on unaccountability. And I subtitled that chapter Our Achilles Heel.
Okay.
And that came from a revelation that God gave me that, listen, son, you have to be accountable for everything you do, but everyone around you has to be accountable as well.
Wow.
Right? Because you're only strong as your weakest link, your weakest link, right?
Yes.
And so understanding how we're literally in the situation that we are in because of unaccountability.
Wow.
If Adam was just accountable, they may have still been in Eden. Right?
Yep.
But also because he was unaccountable, God didn't just kick one of them out, he kicked both of them out.
He did.
So they were equally unaccountable.
Yeah.
For the situation that happened.
Yeah.
And so I have these private moments like, yo, you really like, dude, you really wrote a book, because there was moments where I would write a chapter and then I'll read it before I even go to the next chapter.
Wow.
And there was moments where I was like, you wrote that?
Wow. And that's one of those moments of a great accomplishment. And that's why it's so important, as to the title of our show tonight, Overcoming by Telling Our Stories, because it is so important. I'm actually, I've written a couple of books and I have 2 more that I'm working on. And one of the things I learned from my bishop, who's my husband, and our bishop who's over us, Bishop Knight's actually on here, and Bishop Blue, is not about fame, especially at this point in my life. It's definitely not about fame, but it really is about telling my story and getting it out there that God can take us, right, Charles, broken people,
Yeah,
and turn our lives around when people look like, you did what? You went through what? And to see yourself, you actually did go from the prison to the palace. And I'm not talking about a tangible palace, but I'm talking about a place in God where God is able to use you now. He uses your voice. The last words on the show tonight, if you had to say something to Angela, Yesenia, Bishop Knight, to Joy, and even to Rita, those that have chimed in tonight, what would you say to them about the importance of sharing their stories so that people can understand that they're overcomers as well?
You don't realize how powerful your voice is until you use it. You have no idea how many lives are attached to your story.
Yeah.
There are people that's waiting,
Yeah.
sitting on the edge of their seats to hear what you have to say, because literally their life is in the balance.
Yeah.
And you are the only person that they know that has gone through what they're going through. And they want to know, how'd you do it?
How'd you do it? Exactly. Yeah.
And that I think that's so important. And be obedient. Be obedient. That's so important.
Yes.
That's so important, because when God tells you to do it, just do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Right? Because there is a need. I don't care what anyone has said to you. I don't care how you've been held back, looked over, pushed to the side. When God tells you to do it, just do it.
Just do it. Let's do it. Wow. Listen, and I thank you for that, because like I said, we all have a story, and I have gleaned a lot from not just my story, because we have one, but to you, even your story, Charles. The hour is definitely going down, but I do want to say this. Eddie Johnson chimed in, and he said, "Praise the Lord to everyone from New Rochelle, New York, and Mount Vernon New Tabernacle Church, Pastor Willie Johnson." So again, you have other people that are chiming in, but I just want to talk really quickly, because I do know Charles as a chef, and he is an amazing chef. He knows my husband and I. Just kind of tell us, just for like a minute or two, how are you doing with cooking? Because I'm saying, if you guys want to know somebody that can do catering, he's amazing. Tell us about that real quick.
Oh, so yeah, I am starting catering back up, 3F Caterers.
Mhm.
LLC. The beginning of the year, I plan on launching an event from my catering called Mommy Daycare.
Awesome.
And so Mommy Daycare will be a brunch for women. And I want to have some services there. I'll have some mini services there. But then I'll also have a keynote speaker because the Lord said you can't just feed them physically.
Come on.
You have to feed them spiritually. And so I'll also have a keynote speaker there to speak and to impart and pour into them. So I'm really looking forward to this because the Lord has had this on my heart for some time. So 3F Caterers, the slogan is catering all your life events with love.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you so much for being on our show. But listen, to those that are watching, you want to get his book, Adam. That's powerful title, by the way. Adam, where art thou? That is powerful. And as my team will put that back up on the screen, I see that it's on Amazon, right, Charles?
Yes, it is. It is on Amazon.
Copy. He did said it's not just for men, it could be for women too, because that is powerful right there. Because God can even say to us, where are we? So I like that. Adam, where art thou? I want to thank Charles Colton for being on the show. Again, every time he comes on the show, he blesses us. His story is so powerful, so amazing, to those that are parents, to those that are cooks, to those that are teaching, to those that do so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
To people, and I think you said it best. You're like us. We love people. We love doing what God has called us to do. Thank you so much for being a willing servant. And it's really about the kingdom, right? It's about
All about the kingdom.
It's about, we're taught that it's about the kingdom of God. So to my viewing audience, thank you for joining me tonight. Charles, thank you again. We will see you all next week on Real Talk with a new topic, a new subject, and guess what? A new issue. But look, stay tuned because Gene Favorite Things is coming up soon. So you want to stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching us. See you next week on Real Talk.